Commander Ryland stood at the edge of the drop bay, looking out at the burning sky of Zyrinth. His armor was scratched and blackened from earlier battles, but he moved like a man with purpose. Behind him, 5 soldiers waited, quiet and tense. The mission was clear: drop behind enemy lines, destroy the power core of the enemy's stronghold, and then get out. It sounded simple, but everyone knew it wasn't. The Zyrinth Empire had crushed 3 colonies last month. They didn't take prisoners. Cities were left in ruins. Ryland had seen the footage himself: homes turned to ash, families buried under steel. That was why he volunteered for the mission. He didn't trust anyone else to do it right. The pilot's voice crackled in his earpiece. 1 minute to drop. Zone. Ryland turned to his team. We go in fast, quiet, no mistakes. We're not here to fight a war. We're here to end one. Get the charges on the core. Get out and get clear. That's it. They nodded. No one asked questions. They had trained together for months. They trusted Ryland, even if his missions were always the hardest. The ship shook as anti-air fire exploded nearby. The lights inside the drop bay flickered. Ryland grabbed the side rail to steady himself. Drop in 10, the pilot said. Ryland looked up at the red light. It turned green. He jumped. The others followed. Wind roared around him as he fell through the dark sky. The city below was lit with purple and red fire. Towering spires rose from the ground like metal claws. The Zyrinth stronghold sat in the middle, glowing with a pale blue light, the power core. Ryland landed hard on a rooftop. His boots scraped the metal surface as he rolled and stood. The rest of his team landed seconds later. Form up, he ordered. They moved quickly, weapons raised, eyes scanning every corner. The streets below were empty, but Ryland didn't relax. He could feel something was off. Move to Sector 4. We plant the charges in the main intake tunnels. They climbed down stairways and crossed through narrow alleys. The deeper they went, the quieter it got. No patrols, no drones. Just silence. Ryland stopped. To quiet, he muttered. A sound came from behind a sharp click. Then the whine of charged plasma. Ambush. He shouted out suddenly. Light snapped on all around them. The walls opened, and Zyrinth soldiers poured out. Their armor was gold and sharp-edged, their weapons glowing blue. Ryland fired first. His rifle barked, dropping the lead soldier. His team scattered, taking cover, returning fire. Plasma blast lit up the street. They fought hard. Ryland moved like a shadow, dodging shots. Covering his team, he reached for his comm. This is Ryland. We've been compromised. Repeat. The mission is blown. Too many hostiles. Requesting evac. No. Response. He tried again. Still nothing. Then he saw it. A floating sphere above the city. Pulsing blue. It was jamming their signal. Break off. He shouted. Fall back. But it was too late. One by one, his team fell. Kira was hit by a beam in the chest. Tom took shrapnel to the neck. Ryland tried to drag them out. But more Zyrinth came from every direction. Smoke filled the air. Fire raged down the alley. Ryland was forced back into a ruined building. He slammed the door and locked it inside. He found himself alone. Blood ran down his arm. His shoulder was burned. He tore part of his sleeve and wrapped it tightly. He moved through the building, trying to find a way out, but there was none. The roof was collapsed. The windows sealed. He was trapped. A heavy metal sound echoed outside. Footsteps, then silence. He raised his weapon, breathing quietly, waiting. The door exploded inward. Ryland fired, dropping the first two that entered. Then, something hit him hard from behind. A stun blast. He collapsed, his vision spinning. As his eyes blurred, he saw a figure walk through the smoke, tall, thin, wearing robes of silver and black. A female voice spoke. Do not kill him. He tried to raise his head, but darkness pulled him down. The last thing he heard was her voice again, calm, curious. This one, we keep. Back at Earth Command, a cold silence settled over the war room. The signal from Ryland's team had gone dark. The dropship never returned. No escape pods launched, no response on emergency channels. The generals reviewed the footage. The mission logs, the maps, Then they made a decision. Commander Rylan was declared dead in action. His name was added to the Wall of Honor. Ceremonies were held. Speeches were given. Stories were told of his bravery and sacrifice. But no one knew what truly happened. Deep beneath the capital of Zyrinth, in a hidden chamber of polished stone and alien metal, Rylan lay chained, unconscious, and above him, Queen Verey watched. Through a glass screen, she leaned closer, her glowing eyes studying his face, a human like no other. She whispered, "Let us see what makes him different." Then she turned away, and the chamber lights dimmed. The war was far from over, but something had changed, something the queen herself could not yet understand. Rylan woke up in darkness. His body ached, his arms were chained above his head, and the floor beneath him was cold metal. A strange hum filled the air. The smell was sharp, metallic, and unfamiliar. He opened his eyes slowly. The room was small, round, and dimly lit by a blue glow coming from the ceiling. The walls were smooth, no windows, no visible doors, only silence. He pulled at the chains, but they didn't move. His wrists burned from the metal cuffs. Rylan took a deep breath and looked around again. He wasn't dead. That surprised him, captured, but not killed. That was strange. The Zyrinth were not known for taking prisoners. Time passed slowly. Maybe hours, maybe longer. No one came. No sounds beyond the low hum of machines. He stayed alert, watching for any movement, listening for footsteps. Then, finally, a soft hiss. One of the wall panels slid open. 3 figures entered the room. 2 were guards, tall, armored, and silent. Between them walked a woman. She didn't wear armor. She wore a long robe of black and silver, trimmed with lines that shimmered like starlight. Her skin was pale violet, her eyes golden and sharp. Her presence filled the room without a word. Rylan stared at her. She wasn't just another officer. She was something else. The guards stepped aside. She walked forward, stopping a few feet from him. "You are awake," she said calmly. Her voice was clear and smooth. Not cold, not mocking, just curious. Rylan didn't reply. She tilted her head. "You are not like the others, the ones we fought." Before they screamed, "You did not." Still, Rylan said nothing. She studied him for a long moment. "You were meant to die in that alley, yet here you are, breathing, watching me. Maybe your soldiers missed," Rylan said finally. She smiled. "Slightly. I was there. I gave the order. They did not miss. I stopped them." "Why?" She walked around him slowly. "Because I wanted to see what makes you different. I have read your files. You are called Commander Rylan, leader of the Black Talon Unit, responsible for the destruction of 2 of our bases. Survivors speak your name with fear." "Good," he replied. The queen stopped in front of him again. "I am Queen Verey of the Zyrinth High Court." He narrowed his eyes. "You're the one who ordered the attacks on the colonies." "I gave many orders," she said calmly. "Each one made to protect my people, just as you protect yours. We don't burn cities. We don't wipe out families." "No," she agreed. "You do something worse. You give hope. That makes you more dangerous." Rylan stared at her. "You don't understand humans." "That is why you are here," she said. "To help me understand." "I won't talk," he said. "I don't need you to talk," she replied. "I only need you to stay alive." She turned and walked to the wall. It opened again, and she stepped out. The guards followed. The door sealed behind them with a soft hiss. Rylan was left alone once more. But now he knew something important. He wasn't just a prisoner. He was being watched. Days passed, or maybe longer. There was no clock, no sun, no way to tell time. The lights in the room changed sometimes, growing brighter, then dimmer. Food was brought in small trays through a slot in the wall. Never by hand, always mechanical. No one spoke to him. No one touched him. But he wasn't forgotten. Sometimes the blue light shifted, and he felt like eyes were on him, hidden cameras, silent observers. Then came the visits. Queen Verey returned. Not every day, but enough that he began to expect her. She never asked for secrets, never demanded codes or orders. She only asked questions. "Why did you return to the burning colony on Veros?" Why did you save the wounded enemy soldier near the river trench? Why did you smile after losing half your team? Rylan never gave answers, but her questions told him she had studied him deeply, too deeply, and still. She was not angry, only curious. You fight with reason, she said once, but you also fight with feeling. That is dangerous. Emotions make soldiers weak. He laughed. Then why do we keep winning? She didn't reply. Instead, she left the room with that same calm walk, her robe flowing behind her like smoke. One day, something changed. The food tray never came. The lights turned red. Loud alarms echoed in the distance. Rylan sat up, listening carefully. Shouting. Weapons fired. Then silence. A few minutes later, the wall opened again. But it wasn't the queen. It was a single guard, alone. He stepped in, raised a small device, and pressed a button. The chains fell loose. Rylan dropped to the ground. His arms ached, but he stood quickly, ready for a fight. The guard didn't attack. You are being moved, the guard said. Rylan watched him carefully. Why? No reason given. The guard turned and walked out. Rylan followed, though he stayed alert. They moved through long hallways made of polished stone and metal. Strange symbols glowed along the walls. Other guards stood aside as they passed. They reached a new chamber, large, round, and filled with strange machines. At the center was a clear containment field. Inside it stood Queen Varaya. She turned as he entered. Come closer, she said. Rylan stepped forward. She looked tired. Her robes were marked with dust. Her face was calm, but her eyes held something else. We had an attack. Rebels. My people, she said. They disagree with my decision to keep you alive. Rylan said nothing. She stepped closer to the edge of the field. They believe humans cannot be reasoned with, that your kind exists only to destroy. And what do you believe? Rylan asked. She paused. I believe you are more dangerous than any weapon we've faced, because you care, because you protect those who cannot protect themselves, because you choose to do what others fear. That's called humanity, Rylan said. She nodded. I wish to understand it, truly. Why? She looked up at him. Because I fear it may be the only thing that can end this war. Rylan stepped closer to the barrier. Then you're already too late. We're coming. Every colony you touched, every life you destroyed, we remember. The queen stared at him. I know. And I wonder if keeping you alive was the mistake that ends us all. She placed her hand on the glass. Then she turned away. The guards returned, leading Rylan back to his cell. But something was different now. He wasn't just a prisoner anymore. He was a message, and the queen had started to understand what humans really were. Rylan sat on the floor of his cell, eyes closed, breathing slow and steady. Weeks had passed since his chains were removed, but the door remained sealed. He was free to move inside the chamber, but not beyond it. Food came at regular times. Lights rose and dimmed to mark the days. Queen Varaya had not visited again, but Rylan knew she hadn't forgotten him. Sometimes he felt eyes on him. Sometimes the lights flickered when he spoke aloud. He was still being watched. He waited, but not with idle patience. Each day, he studied the ceiling vents, the seams in the walls, the vibration of footsteps outside his door. He counted every second between power surges and noted the sound the lock made when the food tray opened. He learned the rhythm of the guards. Even if he never saw them, he was preparing, not to escape blindly, but to break free with purpose. One day, as the lights dimmed for rest cycle, the food tray opened late. When it slid shut, Rylan heard a sharp click, different from usual, a mechanical delay. He moved quickly. He pressed his palm to the tray slot and felt a slight gap where the mechanism hadn't fully sealed. Something had jammed. He smiled slightly. This was his chance. Rylan took the spoon from his tray, snapped the handle against the floor, and shaped it into a flat edge using the base of his boot. He slid it into the gap and pushed. Sparks flickered. Then, with a hiss, the panel loosened slightly more. He worked quickly and silently for the next hour, pausing whenever footsteps passed. His movements were slow and careful. He knew this wasn't going to be easy, but it was possible. Finally, The panel popped open just enough for him to squeeze his hand through. He reached into the slot and felt a wire bundle. He tugged gently, felt resistance, then remembered the layout from a training simulation. Power conduits like these often had a bypass cable used by engineers for repairs. He found it, twisted the wire, and heard the satisfying sound of a soft pop. The cell door unlocked. Ryland stood slowly. His heart pounded, but his mind stayed calm. He opened the door and stepped out into the corridor. The hallway was dark, lit only by a soft red glow. The walls were made of polished black stone, almost silent beneath his boots. No alarms, no guards. He moved fast. Ryland didn't try to find a way out immediately. First, he needed a map, weapons, and supplies. He slipped through service tunnels, staying low, listening at every door before entering. He reached a storage room. Inside were crates of medical gear, tools, and old weapons. He found a small plasma cutter, a cloak, and a pair of guard boots. He dressed quickly and used the cloak's hood to hide his face. Then he searched for a control room. Every door he passed, he memorized. Every corner he crossed, he marked with small scratches using a tool he kept hidden in his sleeve. After 20 minutes, he found a small observation room. The door was locked. He used the plasma cutter to melt the side panel and override the controls inside. He found what he needed: monitors, maps, and surveillance feeds. He studied the layout of the palace. His cell had been deep underground, 3 levels below the main throne hall. The hangars were north of the structure, protected by walls and motion sensors. But the sewers below the palace connected directly to the outer edge of the city. That would be his path. He downloaded the map into a stolen data chip and slipped it into his wrist slot. He left the room quickly, careful not to trigger any new alarms. As he crept through another tunnel, he heard voices. 2 guards, speaking in a soft language, passed near an intersection ahead. Ryland pressed against the wall and held his breath. They didn't see him, but he caught a word he recognized: Varea. Then he heard another: betrayal. The guards were speaking about the queen. They said the High Council was no longer pleased with her. Her kindness to the human prisoner had become a political weakness. Some believed she had grown soft. Others believed she had fallen under some strange influence. Ryland listened carefully, then moved away before they spotted him. It confirmed what he had guessed. Varea had protected him, not because she was weak, but because she was curious. She wanted to learn. But now, that decision was making her enemies. It didn't matter. He had to leave. He found a maintenance hatch leading to the lower level. He used the plasma cutter again, careful not to make too much noise. The hatch opened, and he dropped into the tunnel below. The air was damp and warm. The walls were lined with old pipes and cables. He followed the path marked on his map, using small vents to avoid motion sensors. After more than an hour of crawling, climbing, and running, he reached a final gate. Beyond it, open desert stretched for miles. No ships, no soldiers, just sand, wind, and sky. Freedom. But before he could push the gate open, he heard another voice, familiar. You made it further than I expected. He turned. Queen Varea stood a few feet behind him, alone. How did you find me? He asked. She raised her hand. You left signs. You wanted me to follow. He paused. Maybe I did. You're free to go, she said. I will not stop. You. Ryland studied her. She wasn't wearing armor, just a simple robe. No guards, no weapons. Why are you here? He asked. To see if you meant what you said. I did, Ryland replied. She looked toward the desert. If you escape, they will blame me. My enemies will grow stronger. You should have killed me then. I couldn't. Ryland stepped forward. Then remember this, I'll return. Not with anger. With justice. Your people should prepare. Queen Varea nodded slowly. I know. Ryland pushed the gate open. The wind hit him hard, but he welcomed it. Sand blew across the land, but it felt clean, honest. He walked into the night, alone. Behind him, the queen remained in the shadows, watching. She said nothing, but her world had already started to change, and Ryland was now more than just a ghost in her prison. He had become a storm. 3 months had passed since Rylan vanished into the desert. No one on Earth knew he was alive. To the military, he was still listed as dead. His name remained on the Wall of Honor. His team had been warned. His story was told to inspire young recruits, but across the stars. Strange stories had begun to spread. Cargo convoys belonging to the Zyranth Empire were being raided. Supply depots were destroyed. Remote prisons were breached, and human captives rescued. The attackers left no trace, no name, only whispers. Some called him a myth. Others called him a ghost. But Queen Virea knew the truth. She stood on her balcony high above the capital, staring at the horizon. The city was quiet tonight, but inside the palace, her court was restless. Reports had arrived earlier. A dreadnought, one of their most powerful warships, had been taken. Not by a fleet, by a single team. And the security footage showed something impossible. Rylan, he had returned. General Thorn stormed into the Queen's chamber, his fist clenched. "This is your fault," he said. "He should have been executed." Virea turned to face him, her expression calm, but her eyes sharp. "He escaped," she replied. "He escaped because you protected him. You let him breathe when you should have crushed him. Now look what he's done. Our fleet is bleeding. He moves in shadows, and we can't stop him." Virea walked toward the central screen. It showed the last image of Rylan aboard the dreadnought, walking calmly through smoke and fire. His face was partly hidden under a mask, but she knew those eyes. "He fights for his people," she said softly. And growled. "He fights like a beast. He destroys without mercy." "No," Virea said. "He chooses what to destroy. He leaves civilians alive. He rescues prisoners. He avoids killing when he can. That is not a beast. That is a man with purpose." Thorn stepped closer. "Then give me the order. Let me hunt him." Virea didn't answer right away. "He's not just a soldier anymore," she said. "He's become a symbol." Thorn shook his head. "We can crush symbols." Virea looked out the window again. "Can we?" she asked. On a remote moon near the edge of Zyranth territory, Rylan crouched behind a broken generator, watching enemy patrols pass. His team waited silently beside him. They wore mismatched armor and used stolen weapons, but they moved like veterans. They weren't soldiers. They were survivors, humans rescued from prisons, labor camps, and destroyed colonies. Rylan had trained them himself, slowly, carefully. He didn't need an army. He needed people who believed. He pointed toward the wall ahead. "There," he said. "That's the power conduit. Once we blow that, the shield drops." One of the rebels, a young man named Bren, looked nervous. "Are you sure this will work?" Rylan nodded. "They won't expect us to hit the same place twice. That's the mistake they always make." Bren nodded and moved into position. The rest of the team followed. Within minutes, the outpost was in chaos. Explosions rocked the walls, and alarms echoed through the valley. Rylan led the charge, moving with speed and precision. They disabled the guards, freed the prisoners, and vanished before reinforcements arrived. Another victory, small but meaningful. Rylan stood on the ridge above the valley, watching the smoke rise. "They'll send someone stronger next time," Bren said. "Good," Rylan replied. "Let them try." Back on the Zyranth homeworld, Queen Virea called a secret meeting with her science advisor. "Is it true?" she asked. "That Rylan is only one man, but has crippled 5 supply lines?" "Yes, my queen," the advisor replied. "His tactics are precise. He avoids heavy losses, but strikes with great effect. His knowledge of our systems is impressive." Virea paced slowly, and morale falling, the advisor said. "Among both the soldiers and the civilians, many now question our strength. They wonder if humans are truly as weak as we claimed." The queen stopped walking. "They never were weak," she said. "We just didn't understand them." In a quiet room beneath the palace, Virea activated a private communication channel. A hologram appeared, showing a masked contact from the outer ring. "Have you found him?" she asked. The masked figure nodded. "Yes, my queen. He was seen near the Red Barrens, striking a slave camp." "Don't engage," she said. "Just watch, report every move." The figure hesitated. Why not capture him? Because I still believe there's more to learn, she replied. The hologram vanished. Varela sat alone. Her fingers pressed together. Her court wanted blood. Her generals wanted revenge. But she remembered standing near the prison gate that night. She remembered Ryland's words, the calm in his voice, the warning in his eyes. He wasn't fighting a war. He was sending a message, and deep down, part of her believed that message wasn't just for the Empire, it was for her. On a hidden base far from the front lines, Ryland entered a dark chamber lined with stolen tech and maps. He placed a glowing chip onto the table. His team gathered around. This is it, he said. Final stage. He pointed at the star map. Inside the Zyrinth capital, under the palace, there's a vault. Hundreds of humans are still trapped inside. Workers, families, some have been there for years. We're getting them out. Bren looked at him in disbelief. The palace? That's suicide. Ryland looked each of them in the eyes. You don't have to come. But I will. I started this fight. I'm going to finish it. No one walked away. They all stayed in the quiet of night. As the stars burned above the distant world, Ryland stood alone outside the rebel camp. The desert wind carried dust across his boots. He looked up. He thought of his lost team, of the colonies that burned, of the queen who had spared him, and of the faces waiting in the prison beneath her throne. Then he whispered to himself, I'm coming back. The night was dark and cold. A thin wind whispered across the desert as Ryland and his small team crept closer to the Zyrinth palace. The huge building rose like a mountain of black stone, sharp edges cutting into the night sky. Its many towers glowed faintly with blue light, but the city around it was quiet, almost empty. Ryland paused behind a low wall and looked at his team. This is it, he said softly. The hardest part. We get inside, find the prisoners, and get them out. No mistakes. His team nodded, their faces tense but determined. These were no soldiers, but people who had suffered under the Zyrinth. Now they fought for freedom. Slowly, they moved forward, slipping through shadows and avoiding patrols. The palace was heavily guarded, but Ryland knew the tunnels beneath. The sewer system ran deep under the city, beneath the palace itself. It was old and forgotten, but still connected. The team reached the sewer entrance hidden behind a broken wall. Ryland pried it open and they slipped inside. The air was damp and smelled of earth and metal. Darkness surrounded them. They switched on small lights. Stay close, Ryland whispered. The tunnels twist and turn. Watch your step. The team moved carefully, their footsteps soft against the wet stones. Pipes leaked water in steady drops. Strange noises echoed distant. Dripping, the hum of machines above, the faint sounds of the city. After what felt like hours, they reached a heavy metal door. Ryland took out the plasma cutter. Sparks flew as he cut through the lock. The door hissed open. Inside was a large room, dimly lit by flickering lights. Rows of cages lined the walls. Inside, tired eyes watched the intruders. Humans, men, women, and children, some weak and thin, others bruised and hurt. Ryland's heart tightened. He stepped forward. We're here to take you home, he said. Follow me. Stay quiet. The prisoners didn't move at first, but then slowly they rose and began to follow. Suddenly, alarms blared through the tunnels. Trap, Ryland shouted. Guards poured into the room, plasma rifles raised. The team formed a circle, fighting to protect the prisoners. Blasts echoed. Ryland moved like a shadow, dodging fire and returning shots. The battle was fierce, but the team held their ground. Ryland's years of training showed in every move. The prisoners stayed behind the line of fighters. After a tense few minutes, the guards retreated. The alarms stopped. Ryland caught his breath. This way. Quickly, they moved through a maze of tunnels and old hallways, always watching for patrols. The prisoners whispered prayers and words of hope. Finally, they reached a lift. Ryland pressed the button. The doors opened with a hiss. Up, he said. The lift carried them slowly up through the palace, past layers of security and guarded halls. Ryland's heart raced with each passing second. The doors opened to a grand hall. Ryland peered out. No guards in sight. He motioned the prisoners out. Keep moving, he said. The group hurried down long corridors toward the main gate. Suddenly, a squad of elite Zyranth warriors appeared, blocking the way. Ryland's team stopped, weapons ready. The warriors raised their blades, eyes cold. The leader stepped forward. You will not take them. Ryland looked at the prisoners. He raised his weapon. We don't want more fighting. Let them go. The leader laughed softly. You are brave, human. But this ends now. The two groups clashed. Blades met rifles. Sparks flew. The fight was brutal, but quick. Ryland's team fought with fierce courage, protecting the prisoners at all costs. One by one, the elite warriors fell at last. The way was clear. Ryland led the prisoners out of the palace and into the night outside. Their escape ships waited, engines humming softly. The prisoners boarded quickly, fear and hope mixing in their eyes. Ryland stayed behind to cover the retreat. He fired at approaching guards, buying time. The ships lifted off, disappearing into the starry sky. Ryland turned and ran toward the shadows, slipping away before the reinforcements could arrive. Back in the palace, Queen Virea stood before her council. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with fierce resolve. They have broken through our defenses, she said. Ryland's attack was precise and fearless. The generals argued, shouting blame. But the queen raised her hand. We cannot underestimate him, she said. He has become more than a soldier. He is a symbol of hope for many. She turned to the council chamber window, watching the stars above. This war is changing, she said quietly, and we must change with it. Far from the palace, Ryland rested for a moment, watching the sky. He thought of the prisoners, now safe, and the long fight still ahead. He knew the queen would come for him next, but he was ready. He was no longer just a soldier lost in enemy hands. He was a force rising in the darkness. And this was only the beginning. The air was thick with smoke and dust as Ryland and his team moved through the ruined city streets. Outside the palace, explosions shook the ground behind them, the sound echoing off shattered buildings and broken towers. Fires burned where battle had raged just moments before. But in the heart of the chaos, something more important was happening. The prisoners from the palace were being led to safety. Ryland's voice was calm but firm. Keep moving. Don't stop until we reach the extraction point. His team formed a protective ring around the prisoners, weapons ready to face any new threats. The faces of the freed men, women, and children were filled with hope, fear, and exhaustion. For many, this was their first taste of freedom in years. Suddenly, from behind a pile of rubble, a group of Zyran soldiers appeared. They were faster and better armed than the earlier patrols, but they were fewer in number. Ryland raised his rifle and fired a warning shot. The soldiers hesitated. Then a voice shouted in the strange alien language, "Stop." That is enough. Ryland's eyes searched the battlefield and found the source. Queen Virea stepped forward, her silver-black robes flowing as she moved. She raised a hand and motioned for her guards to hold. Her gaze locked with Ryland's across the smoke and fire. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Her voice was low but clear. You were supposed to be dead. Ryland lowered his weapon slowly. So I've heard, he said. The queen took a step closer, surrounded by her guards but moving with calm confidence. Why are you here? She asked. To free those you kept captive, Ryland replied. To end this war. Virea's eyes studied him carefully. You speak of peace, yet you bring destruction. Ryland shook his head. The destruction was already here. I only gave it a reason to stop. A silence fell. The queen's expression softened for the first time. I spared your life because I wanted to understand you. But now I see what you truly are. And what is that? Ryland asked. A leader, a symbol of hope, and a reminder that mercy can be stronger than war. She lowered her hand. Go. Take your people to safety. But know this, our war is not over. Ryland nodded. I know. Without another word. The queen turned and walked back toward her soldiers. They parted to let her pass. Ryland watched her go, then turned back to the prisoners. Move, he said. As the group made their way to the extraction point, Ryland thought about the queen's words. Mercy stronger than war. A strange idea. But it felt true. He looked at the faces around him, people who had suffered but still held hope. That hope was what made them strong. When they reached the ships, the pilots greeted them quietly but with relief. Rylan boarded the last ship. Looking back one last time at the burning city, he whispered, "This is only the beginning." Back on her throne, Queen Virea sat alone in her chamber. The halls were silent. Her council had left, and the palace was quiet again. She stared out at the stars, thinking about Rylan. "He was more than I expected," she said softly. "More than any of us could understand." Her hand rested on a small device on her desk. She pressed it, sending a message in a secret code. The reply came quickly. "We will watch him closely. He grows in strength." Virea nodded. "We must. Be ready." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, whispers of Rylan's actions spread. Stories of a human who defied death, who freed prisoners, who fought not for glory, but for hope. The name Rylan became a symbol, and the war between humans and Xyrant changed forever. The war had changed. Rylan stood on the bridge of a captured Xyrant cruiser, looking out at the stars. The ship's engines hummed beneath his feet, and around him, his team worked quietly. The prisoners they had freed were now safe on nearby colonies, rebuilding their lives. But Rylan knew this was only a step. The Xyrant Empire was powerful, and many still saw humans as weak invaders. Yet something was different. The queen who had once been his captor now moved in shadows, seeking peace. Her choices were dangerous, but Rylan believed in them. A message came in on the communicator. "Commander Rylan," said a familiar voice. It was Queen Virea herself. "I wish to speak with you." Rylan nodded and accepted the call. The image of the queen appeared on the screen, her face calm but serious. "Thank you for freeing my people," she said. "Your courage has changed many minds," Rylan replied. "Thank you for sparing my life. Without your mercy, none of this would have been possible." The queen smiled faintly. "We are not enemies anymore, Rylan. Our war has cost too much. I want to find a way for peace." Rylan looked at the stars again. "I want that too. But it will take time." "Then let us start," she said. "There is a gathering soon. Leaders from both sides will meet. I want you there." He hesitated. "Are you sure you trust me?" "I trust what you represent," she said. "Not just a soldier, but a symbol of hope." Rylan agreed. The day of the gathering arrived on a neutral space station. Orbiting a distant planet, the hall was grand, filled with representatives from humans, Xyrant, and other worlds. Rylan entered with caution. Eyes watched him from every corner, some suspicious, some curious. Queen Virea was already there, standing tall in her silver robe. She greeted him with a nod. The meeting began. Leaders spoke of war, loss, and fear. But Rylan and Virea spoke of something new: understanding and cooperation. Rylan shared stories of the colonies and the people who had survived. Virea spoke of the struggles within the Xyrant Empire and her hope for change. It was not easy. Many opposed peace. Old wounds ran deep. But slowly, walls began to crumble. When the meeting ended, Rylan and Virea stood together, looking out at the stars. "Your people saved mine," the queen said. "And your mercy saved me," Rylan replied. They knew the road ahead would be long, but for the first time, it was filled with hope. Months passed. Trade routes opened. Messages flew between worlds, small steps, but steps toward peace. Rylan visited freed colonies, helping rebuild and train new leaders. Queen Virea worked to unite her people, facing opposition, but never giving up. One day, Rylan received a message. The queen wanted to meet. They met on a quiet hill overlooking a blue planet. "You changed everything," she said. Rylan smiled. "We changed everything." Together, she looked out at the horizon. "Humans are stronger than we thought, not because of their weapons or technology, because of their heart," Rylan finished. The queen nodded. "And that is the greatest strength of all." Years later, the story of Commander Rylan and Queen Virea was told across galaxies. Of a human who survived against all odds, of a queen who chose mercy over war, and of a future where two worlds chose hope instead of hate. The end.